wanted. Okay. Right now, people watching or listening, they're going to be hearing the new theme music of Doughbrain Book Club.
I'm extremely excited to hear what you come up with for this one. Have you thought, like, what genre you want to explore?
Oh, I've already started recording it.
Okay, sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, by the time people hear us, they'll have just heard the intro, so.
Yeah, they'll be hearing it right now, probably.
Oh, fuck yeah. I'm so excited.
Do you remember the music I used for the last Doughbrain series?
You know, the Blodgett book theme song takes up so much real estate in my brain that the Doughbrain one is escaping me, but I remember loving it. Can you refresh my memory?
It was a sample I took from a TV show that he hosted when he lived in New York. And it's like a libertarian rock band. And they sing, "Live free or die."
That's right.
Yeah. So I arranged like my own interpretation of that.
That's right. Very clever. These just get better every book. So, I mean, the bar is high. I'm excited though.
All right. Well, we can start the episode then. I'm Justin, and this is Stella, and we are beginning now the second series in the Doughbrain Book Club mega series. So this is like a series within a series of series. Right?
If you say so, yeah. This is our third book that we're reviewing, if you don't count like the Sonic texts.
Yeah. You shouldn't. That's a separate thing.
Yep, this is the second Doughbrain book, third book club book.
Mm-hmm.
The people have been screaming for new Doughbrain. More.
And we are covering I believe this is the second book that he published. But it contains writing from much earlier than Willie Wilden. And I'm going to show you the cover here. Looks good, huh? So that's called Seldom Right, But Never in Doubt. Essays, Journalism, and Social Commentary, written from 1997 to 2012. And you'll notice at the bottom there it says, with a foreword by Dorothy Parker.
Yeah, when you suggested this book and I read that and saw the cover is a lot to unpack, but that is definitely something that stands out. It is extremely I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? I guess I assumed that he took a piece of her writing and just like threw it in his book and said it was like a foreword. Like maybe it was just like she writes a lot about writing and writers and like the process of writing and that sort of thing. So I was like, okay, maybe he just pulled one of her essays about that. But it's actually much, much worse.
Yeah. So that Dorothy Parker thing is probably going to take up most of tonight's episode. But before we get into that, I want to say how this will be different from previous book club series. So I've shared this book with all of my friends. Everyone that's on the podcast, everyone in the main crew, and like the more expanded crew.
Cinematic universe.
Yeah. We all have a copy of this that we can read from. And this series is going to be more conversational. It's less about me telling you what happened and more like I'm forcing other people to also read this with me. And then we discuss it together. It's a little more collaborative than before.
Yeah. Still painful for everyone involved, but a little different approach.
Yeah. But it's also like smaller chunks. Like this is a book of essays, so you're not reading like a whole narrative that goes on and on. I think it'll be a little bit easier to digest. And previously, like I've been sticking with like a one-on-one format. And we're doing that right now, but it's more of a coincidence this time.
Yeah.
We're planning on more like more group conversations
we
as the series
invited
progresses
many
as well.
other people to be part of this conversation, and we tried to invite them several times. And
that could be a fun running bit where it's just you and me every time. And no one else actually ever reads any of it.
Yeah. Honestly, you can't even blame them.
All right, Stella reminded me of this earlier. It's something I almost forgot, but at the beginning of this book, Joseph has a little bit of a dedication here, and I will read that verbatim. To the women I've tried to court or otherwise impress with my writing over the past 50 years or so, my thanks to all y'all.
Shout out to all the bitches I tried to fuck who wouldn't let me fuck them. God, this is so gross. Like, there's so much to unpack here. First of all, what is worse? Like, it is a big deal, I think, to dedicate a book to someone unless you're dedicating it to like a faceless group, like a big group of people that like there's like it's just like all the ladies, like you're all lumped into this one group of ladies who I tried to impress and it didn't work. Ha ha ha. Like just like completely takes out every individual person. And I don't know, I just think it's an interesting insight into how he thinks about women, and especially those he's like trying to have sex with.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't list any of them by name, but I assume that he does have all of the women he's intending to address here. Like, he knows all, like, every person he's talking about. He knows them. He remembers. He keeps track of that.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll meet some of them later in some of these essays.
Yeah.
What do you...
Well, I should say above the dedication it says, this is a work of nonfiction. However, the names of some people have been changed to protect their privacy. So yeah, probably women.
What do you think of his use of all y'all?
Yeah, weird. It doesn't seem like something he would say.
No.
And he doesn't use an apostrophe. It's just spelled Y-A-L-L.
Which is something we'd expect from Blodgett. Like, Doughbrain as a professional writer, we would expect him to observe the rules of punctuation and grammar. And but it's pure Doughbrain to refer to like dating as courting. Like pure Doughbrain.
Yeah. Wearing a suit everywhere you go. Trying to court women.
To pitch woo.
All right, so this foreword, which purports to be by Dorothy Parker.
Yeah.
I'll warn you now, I have a video recording of Joe reading this entire piece. So we will be getting to that. But before that, Dorothy Parker. This is someone I don't know a whole lot about. She was a writer, obviously. So these are my very basic facts that I know about Dorothy Parker. She was born in 1893. She died in 1967. The year my dad was born.
Do you think your dad could be the reincarnation of Dorothy Parker?
It's totally possible. He displays no traits in common with her.
He's literally exactly the opposite.
She was a member of the Algonquin Round Table, which is something I know about as much about as I know about Dorothy Parker. Harpo Marx was a member as well.
Yeah.
I know that. And she was blacklisted from Hollywood for her communist ties.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So I feel like usually, I think everyone expects me to come into these podcast episodes like shooting from the hip. But today I do feel a little bit more prepared and like qualified to walk through this forward and the first chapter with you.
Yeah.
Because Dorothy Parker is one of my favorite writers. And I also belong to the unfortunate club with Joseph Doughbrain and Dorothy Parker of being a professional writer. So, so I have a lot to say about his use of Dorothy Parker and some thoughts as we kind of move through. So the conceit of this foreword, it's supposedly written by Dorothy Parker, but it's actually Doughbrain writing as Dorothy Parker. Yeah.
if you've kept track of the dates that I've mentioned so far this episode.
Yes. I noticed that. I know exactly what you're going to mention.
This book came out in 2012. Writings from 1997 to 2012.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Dorothy Parker died 30 years before that.
Yes. So she was very dead at this point. She is dust. Mm-hmm. But something that I think is a very interesting choice that Doughbrain makes is that he is writing as Dorothy Parker at age 29.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like we'll get into it, but I think that it's kind of revealing. Like he's like writing as the Dorothy Parker that I think he thinks of in his like horny mind. You know what I mean? We'll get into it. But that's an interesting choice when she died at 73.
Right. Yeah, if you did not listen to the first Doughbrain book club on Willie Wilden, horniness was kind of the main theme of the series. Mm-hmm. I kept a horny count for that one. I don't plan on doing the same here because it will be too much for me to keep track of, I think.
I think you did a good job of kind of hitting on some of the, the high points. And I have some notes about her life and like her politics and stuff that we can talk about as we're like listening to him deliver the foreword. But I just like suffice to say, she would fucking kill if she was alive and had a Twitter. She would be so good on Twitter. She's very like pithy and sarcastic and subversive. I also feel very confident saying that she would fucking hate Joseph Doughbrain. And she would love Rock Hard Caucus. She would definitely be like a Patreon subscriber.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like, we could listen. Oh, wait, you know what? There was something I was going to play first before we listen to him read the piece. I have a clip of him talking about Dorothy Parker, the person, also. So as, you've got someone who knows next to nothing about her. You've got Stella, who's read her work and is, loves her work. And then we've got a guy who's writing an essay pretending to be her. What does he think about her?
Yeah.
Let me share this video with you here. All right, so here is Joseph at Prairie Lights shortly after this book came out. And he read like some essays from the book, of course, and then he did like a Q&A thing with the audience. And this is from the Q&A.
Questions for Joseph Doughbrain?
Yes, John.
Tell us more about Dorothy Parker.
Good question.
Dorothy Parker was a great composer of light verse, for one thing. One of my favorites of hers was a quatrain. I like to drink a martini, 2 at the very most. With 3, I'm under the table. With 4, I'm under my host.
I will say here that this is the biggest laugh he gets in the whole video, and it's something someone else wrote.
I fucking love that the first question after he's talked about his book is like, can we hear more about this other person?
Well, to be fair, I did watch this entire video. That's not the first question.
Oh, okay.
It is one of them.
Yeah. The group at Prairie Lights, they definitely know who Dorothy Parker is. And
yeah, they're old people who read.
No, seriously, Dorothy Parker was a very admirable writer, somebody worth getting to know, because A, she was so screwed up. She had all kinds of neuroses. She suffered severely from alcoholism, and yet she was so self-aware. She knew exactly what was wrong with her, and she was able to speak about it quite eloquently. And she wrote a short story that is very near to my heart called Big Blonde. It's a short story about a middle-aged alcoholic woman, and it was so believable because the author knew her character so intimately. Anybody else?
That's so interesting. Yeah, as I was kind of like thinking about this episode and the forward and everything, it was like, I mean, he definitely identifies with her, and like I have a piece pulled up too about like how to write like Dorothy Parker, and I have like a point about how. So I don't know how you feel about Kenny G, or like I know you're aware of him. Do you have any strong feelings?
I don't know. I mean, I know that like, you know, jazz people like
they love to shit on him. Yeah.
Yeah, hate him. I don't know. I mean, he seems to have some like self-awareness.
Yes,
like,
I think so.
I've seen him he's been in like a lot of like comedy stuff the last few years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
he can take a joke.
He definitely can. And I think he is self-aware. There's a really good documentary about him on HBO right now that kind of investigates like why like jazz critics and music critics and jazz musicians just like hate him so fucking much. And they interview him as well. And it's like, you can't really argue with his technical facility. Like he practices for hours and hours, and but he just like he does not have a soul when it comes to music. And he's like he doesn't really, when he plays, it's not about like, a lot of jazz is based on like call and response and like musical, like you're playing off of each other and really listening to each other. But it's one of the quotes in the documentary is like, good jazz is like sex, and with Kenny G it's just masturbation or something like that. But it's a really good documentary, and I do think he is pretty like self-aware. And anyway, so in the documentary they talk about this like controversy, I think it was in the 90s, where Pat Metheny like wrote this screed about how
I've read that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Kenny G like did a duet with Louis Armstrong, who is long dead.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, so like Louis couldn't consent to being in this duet of him with Kenny G, where they're doing like It's a Wonderful World or whatever. And Pat Metheny equated it to like musical necrophilia. And so I think like with Doughbrain here pretending to be Dorothy Parker, it's kind of like a literary necrophilia, but he's like wearing her skin. Like it's even worse. Like there's just something that is in Dorothy Parker's writing or in like Louis Armstrong's music that these people who are like using their likeness or taking their art or whatever are like, they are missing. And so for them to, I don't know, it really kind of squeaks me out. So I found this this article about like how to write like Dorothy Parker. It was on this blog or whatever, and there's so many similarities like at the surface level between Dorothy Parker and Joseph Doughbrain. That this article kind of highlight. Like the first one is say it in evening clothes. Which I can like, you know that Doughbrain sits down in like his 3-piece suit at his, you know, word processor to like write, and then go light. So like be humorous, have a lot of wordplay, but also go very dark. So like talk about, reference like very serious subject matter, master the art of self-deprecation. But there's something...
he does do that a lot.
He does. So I think like if you just looked at that stuff, you'd be like, okay, I can see how he thinks that he's like Dorothy Parker, but there's something like the soul part is missing. And also I think the accessibility of it, like Dorothy Parker is so subversive, but at the same time, like it's pretty accessible. And that's why it's so brilliant in that like she will say something and it's very much like straightforward and it just like breaks your heart and hits you over the head. Whereas Doughbrain, he really tends to, like with Dorothy Parker, there's not like a single word that you would get rid of. With Doughbrain, like you just want to get in there and just like cut. He just goes on and like takes forever to like circle around a point and that sort of thing. So I don't know.
Well, Yeah, I don't think that's how he thinks he writes, though.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
we'll hear more about that when we read the next essay where he writes a little bit more about like the his technical background and all that. But yeah, I don't think he thinks he needs an editor.
Oh, definitely not.
If you're ready, we should listen to Joe read his own. Well, according to him, it's by Dorothy Parker, but yeah, read his own writing, the introduction to his book. Let me pull that video back up. Same video, but earlier. You can see behind him there's a big Donald Rumsfeld book.
What really tickled me to death was the fact that my publishers persuaded Dorothy Parker to write the foreword to this book. You know, I was afraid she'd be too fucking busy and vice versa. But she said that she would do it.
You saw the kind of audience he's got there. They're like just kind of nice old people.
Yeah, Iowa City, like, literary crowd.
Yeah, we're less than a minute in and he's already said fuck at them.
Even if she had to come back from the dead. And it's maybe not the most flattering foreword I've ever read, but I think it was entertaining enough that I certainly wasn't offended by it. So I'm going to start by reading the words of Dorothy Parker that appear at the front of this book. Last night reminded me of the type of date in which I find myself imprisoned oftener and oftener these days as my birthdays approach the fatal 30 mark.
Right, so she's
An
29.
endless dinner with a man who knows everything
She's
and simply
really
will
hot.
not entertain the quaint little notion that he might occasionally be mistaken. With the exception that when I am literally being dined by such a gentleman, he will usually see to it that my dainty glass of sherry remains at least half full.
So I had a question about that. Is that just like a stupid, like, when he says I'm being literally dined by, when he says as her, I'm being literally dined by, I was like, is that just a stupid, like a mistaken use of literally, or is there like some meaning there that I'm like literally dying? Like, is he dining on her, or?
Yeah, is he eating her? I don't know what that's supposed to mean, because there's not really a metaphor with dining that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and I mean he says literally, so
yeah,
that one I was just like read it 15 times and I was like, what the fuck are you saying?
So we're off to a bad start. That's only one paragraph into the book, and it's already like, what?
Yeah.
In this instance, though, I had to content myself with an apple and Joseph Doughbrain's new book, Seldom Right but Never in Doubt, the very heft of which suggests that Mr. Doughbrain is rather more than half full of himself. Or full of something, at any rate.
It's like 220
Some may
pages.
find his confessionals and declarations
It's not that
enlightening.
big.
I'm much more fascinated by the pathology.
Me too.
Oh,
Yeah.
dear, there I go again, being perfectly cruel to someone I'm sure is a very nice young man.
Nope.
Actually, I could have stomped my little slippers on the hearthrug for joy
See?
when I
What the
discovered
fuck?
that this journalist,
Okay.
novelist, and political...
Pause it. Like, I don't, like, okay, he makes it very clear that she is writing this at her most hot with her tiny little feet. Like, he, like, writes her like she's a little flapper or something.
Yeah. Well, when she was 29, that would have been like the 1920s, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, I just think he has this really horny projection of her. And, I mean, it's super... I don't know. It's just like super masturbatory for him to pretend to be like one of the greatest writers. but please remember, she was at her hottest, and then she reviewed his book.
And the tiny feet thing, there was one of his love interests in Willie Wilden. He talked about how small her feet were multiple times.
That's so weird.
Her name was like Dora or something. I don't remember.
This is a Peggy Hill Stan podcast. We refuse to talk about tiny feet. The bigger, the better.
Nat had finally gotten his pontifications, which have been published in various venues over the past 15 years, organized in book form. It's difficult to support any argument that Mr. Doughbrain is a great writer, or even a very good one. But he has at any rate mastered the art of verbal ecdysiasm.
Okay.
Ecdysiasm.
Did you look up what that is?
I did. Did you?
I did, and it was on my work computer, and then I was like, oh, fuck!
Yeah, so ecdysiasm, I had to
Yeah.
listen to him say it to remember how to pronounce it. Ecdysiasm means a tendency to undress to produce sexual desire in. So I guess she's saying that's what he's doing with his writing, right?
Yeah, I think so. Oh my gosh. He loves to use a $10 word when, like, he could use... There's so many different alternatives. Like, just...
Yeah. Well, this is in the voice of Dorothy Parker. Is that the kind of thing that she does, like, as a joke?
No, like, I think she has a lot of really clever jokes about where she'll do, like, wordplay. Like, she'll use a word and then kind of... like do something tongue-in-cheek with it. Like she has so many like little quips where she said like, you can lead a horticulture, but you cannot make her think, like that kind of thing. Like cute. But I don't think she would just throw in like a word that you and I would have to go. They didn't even have Google back then. Like people had to go to their fucking dictionary to find, like she obviously knew all the words, but
yeah,
she's not going to throw in one that no one knows what it means, and just to like it's just to make yourself sound smart, you know?
Yeah.
Bad.
Ecdysiasm. So basically,
Ectoplasm.
she's saying that he is like a literary flasher, I guess.
Yeah, I found it. I think it's like an exhibitionist thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's Joseph playing Dorothy Parker's opinion of Joe's writing. Is that he writes for the purpose of exposing himself to others unwittingly for his own pleasure.
Yeah, Merriam-Webster says like an ecdysiast is a strip teaser, an erotic dancer.
Oh,
Yeah.
so that's
a
not
pole
like
dancer.
yeah, that's like doing it for others' enjoyment.
Yeah, and they've consented, I think, is the...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, if you're reading this book, you are consenting to being exposed to Doughbrain.
That is no mean feat. However, the question of whether he has exposed anything worth seeing is left to you, dear reader. At least the question might be debated if anyone took Mr. Doughbrain 1/10 as seriously as he evidently likes to pretend he's being taken.
I wanted to give him a little bit of credit here for the self-deprecation.
Yeah.
This one did hit the mark for me as the like person who takes Doughbrain more seriously than anyone else. Like,
yeah, you feel seen.
Yeah, this podcast is the most seriously he's ever been taken. So this one did make me laugh.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I do like when he roasts himself, but I don't know. There's something about it where, like, he is self-aware and he is like saying something mean about himself. But I think people who are too self-deprecating, they don't honestly believe it. And they're either like waiting for you to jump in and be like, oh, no. Or like there's something like narcissistic, I think, about being too self-deprecating.
Yeah, definitely.
You're still talking about yourself.
Yeah. It's sort of like a balancing thing, I think. Like if he's mean enough to himself, it gives him license to be mean outwardly.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's kind of how I think about it. Is like, you know, I give myself a few negative points and then I've got more to dish out.
I like this Galaxy Doughbrain approach.
It's clear that Mr. Doughbrain is one of those people who cannot go through life without seeing himself, playing himself in a high-budget movie, doing whatever he's doing at the moment.
Yeah.
In his rare moments of idleness, no doubt, he's the sort who poses for formal portraits in his dressing room mirror.
Remember the cover of the book.
In many of his essays, Mr. Doughbrain is clearly trying to be a wit. In others, he tries to shock. At times, he's a pedagogue. At other times, a mere purveyor of opinions. Occasionally, a storyteller. Always and above all, though, ostentation is his racket. One finds it difficult to escape the conclusion that Mr. Doughbrain is, in most of his essays, a little less interested in stating his case than he is in impressing the reader with his style, or dare I say that it exists, his charm. But let it never be suspicioned, rumored, or otherwise bruited about that we are dealing with a stylist here. Mr. Doughbrain has an adequate knowledge of the English language, as befits anyone who makes his living as a ghostwriter and trade journalist, and thus his prose is readable. It does not, however, cause one by its magnificence to leap from...
Sorry, that's a good example of, like, if Dorothy Parker is supposed to be roasting you, to have her say something like, but he is an okay writer. Like, I don't know, there's just something about that I think is so gross. Like, just that he would in, like, her persona, like, compliment himself as a good writer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, this is a book, so being a good writer is, like, the number one issue here. Like, are you good at writing? Then your book is worth reading. So, like, criticizing all of these other aspects about yourself, that's a little less relevant in terms of a book forward.
Yeah.
So he can pretend that he's, like, writing like Dorothy Parker roasting him, but no, I mean, and she's also, like, a great writer, so her saying that you are good at writing is actually, like, the ultimate praise that it is like giving yourself while using a corpse as a puppet.
Yeah. I mean, I would feel a lot better about it if he just, like, what if it was, like, a negative review she had given of the book, and she just, like, I would admire that type of self-loathing a lot more than him, like, peppering in these thoughts that, like, well, like, the technical facility is, you cannot question that kind of thing.
Yeah.
One's chair and do a dance a joyous tango with one's French poodle.
Real quick, is that the kind of thing that she would write?
I don't know. I don't think so. Let me see. Let me just do a cursory Google search for French poodle Dorothy Parker.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? She did have a poodle.
Okay. Did she do
oh my gosh,
joyous tango with her French poodle?
No pictures of her doing a tango, but there is. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna send you a couple photos. If you just look up French poodle Dorothy Parker, you'll see these, like, very beautiful portraits of her and this poodle.
Yeah.
And then there's one where, like, she got a painting of the poodle and she's, like, showing it to the poodle. Yeah, I don't know if you can Google it, but I mean, like, don't read Joseph Doughbrain's book yourself, dear listener. Listen to us and go read some Dorothy Parker, because she's a lot better.
Yeah. Here, let me continue with his reading here.
Mm-hmm.
Once or perhaps twice in reading these essays, you notice that some merciful pixie of a literary bent has whispered a memorable epigram into Mr. Doughbrain's ear.
This reminded me of the demons.
All of us dream of being
Willy
God. None of us would be a saint. That's one I don't think I'd heard before. And therefore I must give Mr. Doughbrain the benefit of the doubt and assume that he invented it. You can just about see Mr. Doughbrain tucking himself into bed with a coprophagous grin on the night that he thought of that little gem, secure in the knowledge that it would one day find a home in the pages of Bartlett's.
Coprophagous.
Oh my God.
Is that a word that you know?
No, certainly not.
Yeah. It's, to put it in dictionary terms, feeding on dung, as certain beetles.
Oh my God.
So a coprophagous grin is a shit-eating grin, which is the common phrase.
Yeah, I think she would just use the word shit. I really do.
Yeah,
like,
this is a big word that he had used before in Willy Wilden. Like, I immediately remembered it.
Do you have like a list of all the words you've learned from Joseph Doughbrain, little glossary?
No, I don't. But I will probably remember them. And I remember I learned obstreperous from Todd Blodgett.
Mm-hmm.
This is the passage in Willie Wilden. Mother Teresa was the most repulsive geek in the world's crookedest carnival. If there's any cosmic justice, she's now indulging her love of self-mortification by starring twice a day as the amazing Coprophaga, bride of the burrow, in some otherworldly Tijuana.
Oh my God, that's so dark.
So that's a different variation on the word coprophagus, but...
Yeah, that's, I think, a more memorable mental picture.
Yeah. He's recycling his big words, which makes them less...
God, learn some new fucking words, Joseph Doughbrain, like you're making us do. Jeez Louise. This is another good example of, like, him as Dorothy pretending that, like, to roast him, but, like, he's great. Like, he has such a good turn of phrase. Credit where credit's due.
This is a shitty way to show everyone this, but here's the photo of the dog looking at a painting of the dog.
Yeah.
And that's Dorothy.
Her and her poodle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy that he writes as a 29-year-old Dorothy Parker, because I don't know, he either fantasizes about that version, or he doesn't want to admit that the 70-year-old version would be even less willing to deal with his bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. She did spend most of her life not being 29.
Most of it, yes.
We might also point to the occasional instance of genuine humor, as when Mr. Doughbrain describes an attack of gout in A Most Romantic Illness.
I'm excited.
At other
to hear
times, he
that
can
one.
be enlightening, if you happen to be interested in the somewhat esoteric subjects on which he chooses to enlighten us. I, for one, do not know how I ever got along without knowing all about the evolution of the word Nimrod as a common noun. But now, thanks to A Nimrod in Search of Daffisms, I plan to dine out on this precious knowledge, ever so often.
Wow,
At
he
first
has
blush,
a few tricks to
one
show
occasionally-
Dorothy Parker.
Yeah, she'd never heard the word Nimrod before.
You will get the impression that Mr. Doughbrain adopts positions not because he believes them, but because he knows they will shock. But close reading of many of these essays will leave one convinced that however naughty, perverse, or just plain batty our young Sparky might be, he at least means every word he says.
Young Sparky was 56 years old when he self-published this book.
Whether or not his arguments are defensible, never let it be said that Mr. Doughbrain ever takes the majority view without adopting a variant of it that the majority of his readers will find insufferable.
Ding, ding, ding.
In rare dramatic instances, the dear man is actually right, as in his various rants on political correctness and criminal justice.
Okay.
Yeah,
this is where we need to have a chat. Okay, so I think it's really helpful. So not even in this shitty forward, but like the rest of the book where he references and makes like these, where he talks about like politics, and he has like an entire chapter on like LGBT folks and how they should keep, spoiler alert, how they should like keep their deviant lifestyles to themselves, like that kind of thing. Like, just keep in mind, dear listener, as we go through the rest of this book, that he is saying here that Dorothy Parker thinks that some of his opinions are correct. And here's what Dorothy Parker, like, these are her political opinions. Just a brief high-level aside. So she was a leftist. She was an anarchist. She got arrested for marching on behalf of Sacco and Vanzetti when they were arrested.
Yeah.
She said at that time, I don't mind getting arrested. And then she got beat up. When they were executed, she said, my heart and soul are with the cause of socialism. During World War II, she founded the Hollywood Anti-Nazi League. She hated fascists. She famously said, which is worse, the perpetrators of justice or those who are blind to it.
Yeah,
and then
that's what got her blacklisted was, that group.
Yep, she got blacklisted. And then when she died, she left her entire estate to Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So, like, She was good.
Right, yeah. And he says specifically that the instances where Dorothy Parker would find him to be correct are when he writes about political correctness and criminal justice. Criminal justice.
Yeah. I just like, my understanding is if someone who was alive wrote a foreword to your book, wouldn't that imply like some sort of endorsement of like the work that follows, the ideas that follow? So like, honestly, the more I think about this, the angrier I get that he would like pretend to be someone who, that he would pretend to be Dorothy Parker, and then like that she would endorse his book and specifically some of his like vile opinions.
He is a libertarian, or he did call himself one at this time. I think he's drifted further right since this time, in my opinion. So it is possible that there is a little bit of overlap in his criminal justice opinions with hers.
I'm sure we'll find out. As we read his book. Maybe he confused her with Ayn Rand. Was she ever an alcoholic?
I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, well, let me just play like the last sentence here, and then we'll talk a little more.
But on those occasions, he states his point in a manner clearly calculated to induce rages and massive strokes rather than conversions amongst those who take the opposite view.
I mean, he is doing
Mr.
that
Doughbrain
to us.
conscientiously makes himself dislikable at times with all the fervor of one who wants no more than unequivocal adoration from everybody.
He's in on the joke. It's okay that we hate him.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the entirety of the foreword by Dorothy Parker. I mean, obviously it's a joke that he's using Dorothy Parker, but it's like, if you really do like respect her and her work, like that is a like pretty disrespectful thing to do. Like, if I was going to do something like this, like write a foreword to a book by a dead person, I would choose somebody who I disrespect greatly, and like that would be the joke, is like this person that I hate would hate me too, but they're long dead.
It's, that's a good bit. I think like it would be in poor taste unless it was done like perfectly well. Like you could like if it was like satirical and if it was like in keeping with that person to a T and like, that kind of thing, you would have to execute it perfectly. And I think we can both agree that Joseph Doughbrain is not doing that in this case.
No. Let me read that last bit one more time. Mr. Doughbrain conscientiously makes himself dislikable at times with all the fervor of one who wants no more than unequivocal adoration from everybody. So there's a lot of conflict going on inside of him.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Inside him, there are two wolves. One who just wants to be loved and one who wants to piss you off.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm finding myself identifying with that a little bit.
You are. Yeah.
Yeah. I understand those impulses.
I think, I don't know, not in your case. I mean, I wish I would have said this before you said that. But I feel like it's all mental gymnastics to like protect his like, I think he's very, very fragile inside, truly. But if you hate yourself and your whole thing is that you're trying to like make people upset, then when they are upset or when they hate you, like you're like, I beat you to it. You know what I mean? So
that was the point. Yeah. It's sort of like putting like a kind of like ironic distance between yourself and your work. Like, the intention behind this is not for you to actually enjoy it. It's for me to antagonize you. But also, because that's the intention, you shouldn't hate me too much. Because it's just
and
you
should like it. Is the thing.
Yeah, you should get some enjoyment
out
of that.
Yeah, I don't understand. Who does he think this is for?
He's a provocateur, you see. So we're not lucky enough to have a video of him reading the entire book. So this next one we're on our own. Before I guess I can talk a little bit about like how the book is split up. So there's like it's just a series of essays, of course, and he has most of them categorized. And those categories are politeness and political correctness, growing up, love, romance, and naughty stuff, other annoyances of adulthood, aside from love and sex, I guess. One section is called explaining myself, and we're all looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I'm something he's had to do many times in his life.
Yeah. A short one on religion, a long one on the awful English language, and I think this is separate from that, poetic matters, food, politics, and the law, which features a 3-part essay on Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one, actually.
And then the final section, fittingly, is death.
That's interesting that, I mean, he talks about growing up and then the book ends at death, but he's not structuring the book according to, like, from birth through growing up through death. It starts with political correctness through, like, birth and growing up and then death.
Yeah. And food.
So there was, yeah. Food.
Yeah. Well, it's not a memoir, it's not an autobiography, but there is a lot of like autobiographical material in it. In this essay we're about to talk about, for sure. But the plan going forward is that each episode will cover a section of the book, like a group of essays. So today we're doing the uncategorized introductory essays. So after the Dorothy Parker forward is an essay called Being a Writer, which contains some like autobiographical stuff, as I just mentioned. For example, I'm skipping around here a little bit. Again, we're just here to have fun. I'm not going to tell you everything that happens in this.
Yeah.
This is what I found extremely interesting. I've been a loner all my life, partly because I learned very early on that I must trust nobody, and partly because I developed unpleasant traits that made me difficult to get along with. Since I often played alone, I would develop stories in my head and sometimes act them out aloud, speaking to imaginary people or soliloquizing to myself. Possibly as a result of this, people started writing books about me. So to speak, I began to imagine when I was 4 or 5 that everything I did or experienced was being chronicled in narrative form by invisible men who haunted me wherever I went and wrote my actions down as fast as I could perform them.
I know we like throw around the phrase main character syndrome, but like
wow. Yeah, this is literally that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this he said something about how like messed up Dorothy Parker was.
Yeah.
This is like deeply pathologically interesting. And again reminded me of the demons that came up several times in Willie Wilton. Like this appears to be the real life inspiration for those demons.
Yeah, and they're writers.
Yeah. If you did not listen to the Willie Wilden series, the main character has these black little demons that follow him around in his imagination and just like relentlessly mock him throughout his life. It's like really dark and apparently based on something real that Mr. Doughbrain imagined when he was a child.
Perhaps you'll get to this part, but something I really like. So he's talking quite a bit about why he became a writer, what it's like to be a writer. He says that when he was a junior at the University of Iowa, one of his professors gave him a term paper back and said, you must not go into law school. Stay in this vale of tears and keep writing.
Ugh, yeah. There was, something about law school and politics. It's like towards the beginning, and I have a video, actually, a short video clip to play. But, in terms of not being a lawyer, he says here, I wanted also to be a lawyer and maybe go into politics till I realized that I was too lazy and unfocused to take that direction. And I have him saying basically the same thing, but it's like, it's funny to hear it in his voice. So let me pull this up real quick. So I watched not only that 40-minute video of him reading from the book, I also watched this half-hour interview. And this is a show that Yale Cohn used to do on PATV. I think I played some clips of this show for the Willie Wilden episodes also. I think the show is just called Talking With, hosted by Yale Cohn. And I pulled this off of YouTube, and the video title was Joseph Doughbrain on Why Political Correctness is the Enemy of Freedom. But we're not really going to get into that right now. It's just a short clip where he says this.
On food and drink, there's section on politics and the law, which has always been a particular interest of mine because when I was a young fella, I thought I was going to be a lawyer and a politician, and then I realized that that was just going to be way too much work, and I didn't have the right personality for it anyway. But I'm still,
I don't know. I
shall we
think
say, an amateur
might do
lawyer,
really
an
well.
amateur politician.
Yeah. Well, and he called himself right there a bit of an amateur lawyer and an amateur politician.
Aren't we all?
And you may not remember, but I'll just remind everyone now, he ran for mayor of New York City as a libertarian. Something a lot of amateur politicians do is run for mayor of the largest city in the country. It's more that he's like a failed politician.
Yeah. I think that probably like your first campaign, especially if you're running as a libertarian or like a fringe party candidate, is probably a lot of work. Like it can be a lot of work, but I think he has sort of an inflated sense of like how much work politicians actually do.
Yeah. It depends on the kind of politician, I think. Like I'm sure a lot of them are like exceptionally lazy because they're just rich people.
Yeah.
They have staff to do all the real work.
Yeah. Yeah. You think fucking Bill Clinton's getting off his ass? No.
Another thing he mentions here is that he's had an interest in writing since he was very young, and that professor who told him not to go into law school and encouraged him to keep writing, that sort of gave him the motivation he needed to start writing like longer form. And he says he, as he puts it, cranked out a preposterously bad novel. And he has 2 different manuscripts of his early novels that he never published, and someone else has these manuscripts.
A woman.
Yeah. He says she could blackmail me with them. I'm so curious.
I know. Yeah, I would release it. Release the manuscript, ma'am.
Yeah. Whoever you are out there. Because seeing what he puts in the books that he does publish, Willie Wilden, what is in those early books that's so bad that he considers them potential blackmail material?
Yeah.
You know? Do you fantasize about like licking the armpits of women half your age in those books also? And it's worse because half your age was a child at that point?
Yeah, probably. Their tiny little feet pitter-pattering through the house.
To my mind, the difference between bad art and good is whether the artist said, "Oh, I've spent enough time on this project, it's good enough," versus, "I've made it as good as I know how to make it." The question that I have is which one's which? Which one of those is good art, I think.
Yeah. What is art is the larger question.
For me, it's like once I get bored of it, it's done and it's good. Interesting thing here. He's writing about if somebody's intention is to just write something that is beautiful, pretty flowery language, you'll write meaningless sentences and passages as purple as regurgitated Kool-Aid.
I mean, he does. You can't deny that he has a flair for a turn of phrase occasionally.
My issue with that is I think that regurgitated Kool-Aid can be any color. It depends on the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had some personal experience, some personal research on this one.
I can't recall ever regurgitating Kool-Aid, but I imagine it comes out the same color it went in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, the intensity of the color of Kool-Aid, yeah, anything you puke out for the next week is going to come out the color of the Kool-Aid you ingested.
Oh, I should have kept going with this. So the people he imagined writing books about himself, there's a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd be crying in response to one of the countless humiliations that one suffers as a child. And he says that these imaginary people are writing about those countless humiliations as well.
Yeah.
At that point, I would sometimes shout, "They're writing books about me." And my poor parents could not figure out what I meant, nor could I explain it very well.
Oh, fuck. He also, so he mentions too, he talks about how when he says, I talk in blank verse. When I craft a sentence to be spoken, I pay attention to elements like meter, scansion, and assonance. Assonance, probably more than does anyone I know. I now understand why my youngest sister, when she was about 5, observed, "Joseph, you talk funny." I also thought it was kind of a telling detail when he talks about like writers and how he says something like writers can basically go 2 routes. So all writers take different approaches to writing in relation to the other parts of their lives. Some really do live the stereotype, locking themselves in a crummy apartment and skipping meals because all they can think about is writing. Others behave more or less like normal people, having families, playing golf, joining Rotary, and so on. You'd hardly know that they were writers at all. So my question is, which camp do you think Joseph more firmly falls into?
I believe he considers himself to be the latter. Like he lives a somewhat normal life and isn't like, neglecting hygiene to write. But a lot of that stuff, I mean, to be fair, I don't know this guy's friends. I don't know his personal life, but I think like in practice he's probably closer to the other one.
I don't know. It sounds like he's really struck out a lot with women, so I have a hard time, and the way he talked about the mother character in his book, Willie Wilden, I have a hard time picturing him having like a pleasant family life.
Yeah, it doesn't come across that way.
Yeah.
And he spends so much time in this like writing about his like how unpleasant he is to be around. like that's partially why he's a writer, is because like he would rather like express himself with the written word than like speak to anyone.
There was one other thing I think he mentioned about art.
Well, before you get there, he writes about how a lot of his motivation was to impress girls. He mentions a girl I should have known was unattainable. Do you think that's? I guess. How do I phrase this? Do you categorize people in that way? Like whether you can attain them or not?
I walk down the street and every person I see, I could obtain them.
Yeah.
I'm going to put them in my book dedication to all those I courted using my writing. I don't know. It's just like, it's such a weird thing to be like, I used my writing to... Who has that ever worked for? like she was so horny for me because of my writing.
Yeah, it's unclear. Well, he says that it seldom worked.
Okay.
But he also says many is the woman I've wooed with letters.
Yeah.
So you did woo them?
And I think we all know what he means by wooed.
That's sort of like a, mental categorization of people, like whether they're attainable or unattainable. That also reminds me of Willie Wilden, because right at the beginning, he claims that every man, when they see a woman,
immediately they categorize her
the would or would not group in their head, in the file. But those are actually two separate systems of categorization.
Yes.
It's would you or would you not versus would they.
Would they?
Yeah. Which I guess is probably well, I think it's probably healthier to think about it the second way. Like, think about whether this person might be interested in you, because then you're at least considering that they're
a human.
Yeah.
They have agency.
Although when you call it unattainable, it's unclear.
Yeah. I mean, that is so much like you obtain an object. It's like literal objectification. You don't like obtain a person.
Was there...
You shouldn't.
He says unattainable versus... Well, you're saying unobtainable. Is there like a meaningful difference, do you think?
Oh, I should have known it was unattainable.
Unattainable.
I feel like they're probably the same. Now we're getting pedantic.
Yeah, the awful English language, as he calls it.
That is true.
Yeah. Well, attainable seems is something that you say about like goals. So that would be, I think, like thinking about a woman as something to...
you like rise to the level where you can attain her.
I don't know. I've been in like a monogamous relationship with Ashley for a very long time. So like my brain isn't, I guess, I don't think about this stuff very often anyway.
I've known you for a very long time. I think since we were 14 or 15 years old. Yeah. And I would definitely remember if you said anything like this about women. Or like, I don't know. It's just such a fucked up way to think about women. And like, I know he's talked about like having women friends in some of his writing. Yes. So like, if you read any of his content and then you as a woman, you would know immediately that he either like categorized you into would you or would you not. It's just like he can't, like, how does he have relationships with women that, I don't know. It just seems like really creepy to me. Like I wouldn't want to hang out with him, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. There is like, like you've got a lizard brain inside your human brain, and it's like you are physically attracted to people very superficially, and like that stuff does go on in the background, but
yeah, that makes you a human.
I don't know if that's like consciously you think like, is she yes or no? Like every woman you see, like that's the first thing you got to get out of the way.
Yeah. Boob to waist to hip ratio has her face is symmetrical. He talks a little bit about, so as someone who writes, I don't write fiction, but I write like for my day job all day. This paragraph I thought was kind of freaky.
That's something you have in common with him a little bit is, writing as the job.
Yeah. And he says, I'm a writer because I'm self-absorbed and egotistical. I want to impress people. I want people to think I'm both wise and clever. And most writers write for the sake of their egos above all else. I don't really think that's the case. I think like, especially, for like nonfiction writing or whatever, you're writing to inform or to communicate or to help people. more so. I think a better writer is like, you have to write, you have to tell a story. Like, if it's about your ego, it's just going to be shit writing because you're, again, just trying to use words or like turn a phrase to make someone think that you're smart or whatever. I just think that's...
Yeah, you said something before about Kenny G's music being masturbation.
Yeah.
I would say that like completely ego-driven writing is probably similar.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I did like one bit that you skipped there, actually, in what you were just reading. Better that I create unfavorable buzz than no buzz at all. To which I have to say to him, you're welcome.
I would just love, like, a great joy is to just like picture Joseph Doughbrain walking into like the BuzzFeed offices with all the like millennials working there, and he's like just in his 3-piece suit with his little pocket square, and just how he would interact with everyone.
Yeah, well, there is like writing in this book about the way that he dresses, so I'm looking forward to that, because it, like, having been in the same room as him before, it's weird. He's overdressed all the time, and that's like a strange way to live your life, I think.
Yeah.
Like the kids who wore suits to school every day, like, that's, everyone thinks it's weird. It's not like we're impressed.
Well, I mean, wear the clothes for the job you want. He wants to be mayor of New York, so you gotta wear a suit pretty much every day.
Was there anything else in this essay that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, would you classify this essay as Orwellian because it ends with quotes from George Orwell?
I think, like, very definitionally, it has to be Orwellian. It has traits of Orwell. The traits being
literally,
writing by Orwell, like things he wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he quotes Orwell basically like repeating what he had been saying, that all writers are vain, selfish, and lazy. Although this is weird, I'm not sure what's going on here. The great mass of human beings are not acutely selfish, Orwell wrote. After the age of about 30, they almost abandon the sense of being individuals at all, and live chiefly for others, or are simply smothered under drudgery. But there is also the minority of gifted, willful people who are determined to live their own lives to the end, and writers belong in this class. He's using Orwell's words to say, I'm special, and I'm different, and I'm a libertarian. And that's another thing, like, George Orwell was also a socialist. I mean, he was also kind of a shithead. Like, he was turning in communists to the government and shit, but he did believe, at least to some degree, in some sort of like collective welfare and stuff. So that's two writers that vehemently disagree with like the fundamentals of Doughbrain's politics that he's using to make his own points.
Yeah. And I mean, we'd be remiss to note that he actually quotes Orwell's actual words, whereas he does not use any of Dorothy Parker's writing.
Yeah.
He impersonates her. He takes her name for his book, slaps it on the foreword.
Yeah. Do you think there's any sort of gendered aspect to that?
I mean, he doesn't write George Orwell when he was 29 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. He respects the male writer enough to actually to quote him, like use real words that he wrote instead of, as I said earlier,
impersonating
use
her.
his corpse as a puppet.
Are you going to end this episode with like Puppet Master?
Sure.
Or this is probably not politically correct.
Oh.
But the song from Silence of the Lambs, where he's like tucking in his pants and dancing in his woman suit.
Yeah.
God, I think you're gonna have to cut some of that stuff. That's not very nice. That has not aged very well.
I don't know. That wasn't based on a real person, right? That was all fiction, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe Ed Gein.
Oh yeah,
like
it was.
yeah.
Some of it was based on Ed Gein. Yeah,
but not like I don't think there was really a Buffalo Bill.
Right. Well, anyway, that was the foreword by Dorothy Parker, followed by Being a Writer. The 2 opening essays to Seldom Right but Never in Doubt by Joseph Doughbrain. As you know, if you've been a subscriber to the show for a while, we don't really follow a schedule, but at some point, whenever we record another one of these, it will probably be about the next section of the book, which is called Politeness and Political Correctness. And it includes such essays as Manners Change, Assholery Remains. And this is weird. Negroes, African Americans, and colored people.
Yep.
You're here, you're queer, whatever.
Yep, I'm hoping to be part of that one.
And Working Dirty, that's the last one. So, which I assume is a review of the Norm Macdonald movie, Dirty Work. But I haven't read it yet. So thanks, everybody, for following along with us. Thanks, Stella, for covering those essays with me.
Yep.
Maybe I'll see you next time.
Oh, yeah. I think it's just going to be you and me for based on the response you got for tonight. I think it'll probably just be you and me.
All of our friends are really excited to read this book.
Yeah. So join us next time for Never Right, Seldom in Doubt, baby.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
Dorothy was a waitress on the promenade. She worked a night shift. Dishwater blonde, tall and fine. She got a lot of tips. Well, earlier I've been talking stuff in a violent room, fighting with lovers past. I needed someone